Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. I'm your co-host for today, Mike Bailey, along with Ellen DePlacido. Ellen, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
I know what we're going to talk about today. We're finally going to get our
No
warm,
way.
warm season vegetables, in the ground,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
We're going to kind of
right,
remind
right.
you of some of the important things. And before we started recording, Ellen said, "Yeah, we had cool, now we got warm. Are we going to have hot too somewhere along?" No, Ellen,
Okay.
we don't get to hot. If you
Okay.
right now, if you haven't put it in the ground yet, it's all goes. You put everything in there and get it all set. Even some of your
Okay.
cooler vegetables, you can kind of sneak in a little bit late if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to let you roll. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, you want to ask yourself a question. Is it late enough and warm enough in the growing season to plant your warm weather vegetables? And if it is, go for it. Okay. You want to prepare your garden bed first and I want to remind you is that if the soil is still very wet, don't work it up yet. But make sure you have a plan before you go out and buy your plants and seeds. Like, what do you want to plant? How many do you want to plant? And have that plan because sometimes you might overspend and you really don't have any place to put those plants that you buy.
Oh, come on, Ellen, you're
So,
taking all the fun out of it. Okay.
no, come on now. And then make sure you buy healthy plants. And that doesn't mean that you just look at the biggest plant. You look at the color, you look to see if there are any insects or any diseases. And again, look at the roots. We've even talked about you could pull those plants out of their little pots and take a check at the roots. I don't know if you want to let everybody know you're doing that, but you can do it. So always buy healthy looking plants, not the biggest. Make sure they're nice and green and leafy. So, Mike, do you want to talk about planting plants?
I thought you were going to do that, Ellen.
Well, I will. Oh, yes, I will.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you.
So, when you plant these plants, pull the roots apart, kind of like what we talked about when you're planting trees. I know when we plant, we pull the roots apart, we place them in an outward direction, you know, and then you space them properly because those plants are going to not only grow up, but they're going to grow out also. You want to know about how big are these plants going to get and then space them accordingly. So if you're planning on putting some supports in, when you plant your tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, it's a good thing to put supports in, but it would be best if you put them in at the same time that you're planting. And then once again, water well, okay? Keep those plants healthy and keep them moist. Now, Mike, do you want to take
Okay.
over?
Yeah, if I can just add
Okay.
a couple things to this, because
Sure,
you
you
always
always do.
you
Yeah.
well, I always do, but you always say this too. I mean, don't worry about damaging those roots. But
Right.
when you pull them out of those things, inevitably you're going to find some plants that have a circular root growth pattern to them. And again, it's just like the trees and the shrubs that we talked about last time around. You got to break that up because you want to redirect those roots in an outward direction. You want them to go out searching for nutrients and moisture out of beyond that little circle of growth that they currently have.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan, I know you like to kind of even dip your plants into a little
I
basin of
do.
water, okay,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
soak that root ball a little bit before
Mm-hmm.
and it's a matter of just dipping it in because they're so,
Yeah.
those root balls are
Sure.
so small.
They're very
You just
small. Mm-hmm.
dip it in and pull it out, and it certainly gets that little root ball of that vegetable plant, okay, nice and wet. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that I wanted to add. But
Oh, good.
now, as far as buying seeds, you got to read the packets. I know. Okay. Yeah, nobody likes to do that. We like to look at the pictures and stuff like that. And if you can, buy some disease resistant seeds, plants, because they'll save you some grief downstream. Now, disease resistant doesn't mean they're not going to get a disease, or pest resistant doesn't mean that they're not going to be attacked by pests, but it's less likely that they would be. And keep in mind that the instructions on the back of these plants are really, back of these seed packets are
Mm-hmm.
typically for traditional gardening, where you put things in rows and space them by 18 to 20 inches, et cetera, and stuff like that. But with mounded and raised beds, you can plant intensively, like we talked in the past, where
Mm-hmm.
you can space those carrots or those beets or the lettuce, probably inch and a half to 2 inches apart in rows across that mounded or raised bed area. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to plant intensively. You'll really increase the productivity of your overall garden. And in keep in mind that one packet of seeds can go a long way. Don't overbuy. And as far as putting them in the ground, one of the things that you really got to pay attention to on the packet is how deep the seeds should be. Try to pay attention to that. And when you cover those seeds, make sure it's with some soil that's got some fine particles. Don't put these big lumpy clumps on top of the seeds. In fact, I like to take it and squeeze it in my hands and break it up, and maybe I'll even take a bucket with some peat moss or some potting soil in it and stuff like that. I'll mix some of that soil in with it, and I'll put that over it, because then it's nice and friable, and it's not going to crust over once it gets wet, and it's going to allow those seeds to push up through that soil without a lot of grief. And then, as always, mark where you plant those seeds, or Ellen's going to get after you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you said my name on that.
The garden police. Okay, she'll come by with her markers. Okay, and her little sticks. Okay, and say you don't have a marked. Okay, and then once you do all that, you got to keep the soil moist. Don't flood it. But because you'll wash the seeds away, but keep it moist. That might mean in a dry period, where there's a lot of sun and wind. Maybe you're going to have to even moisten those things on a daily basis. And then once those seeds germinate, the moisture is so important then also, because those newly germinated seedlings can really kind of dry out in a hurry if you don't pay attention. So look at your garden, giving them some moisture when they need. And if you're having trouble keeping them moist, don't be afraid to put a little loose straw over the top of those seedlings to kind of shade them a little bit, to kind of help keep that soil moist. Okay, remember, those are your little babies there that you've planted. Okay, so you got to take care of them. They need a little care. Once they get a little tough, once they get to be teenagers, you can ignore them a little bit, okay, and let them grow on their own. But initially, you got to pay attention. So
And
Ellen,
Mike thinks I'm a little bit more cautious than he is. I don't think so.
okay, so
Taking care of his babies.
So get off to a good start. Get those warm weather crops, in the ground. Don't wait for Ellen's hot weather crops, to come in next time. So thank you for listening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.